What is up, guys? Welcome back to Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. We have got an awesome chat today. So if you haven't listened to read, I don't know, a couple, like 2 or 3 reads back about Keat, about the decentralized, about the peer-to-peer video, chat, and audio app. I got really stoked about this thing. This is such an interesting project, and it's, built on top of Hypercore, and it's something that I'm very intrigued to dig into. So I immediately reached out to Mathias and Paolo, who work with Holepunch, and we got together to have this conversation. This will also be posted on YouTube, hopefully pretty soon. I've still got some kinks to work out with my video workflow. But this was actually recorded in Keat. So we used the video chat app in order to do this show. However, Keat did not have a native recording option yet. Mathias said that it was on the way, and because of that, I had to actually screen record and then capture the audio separately. I was using Audio Hijack, and I was just going to grab the application audio, thinking that, that would solve the problem. But as you'll see, you can actually see in the video, like half of my Audio Hijack comes up into the screen at about like 20 minutes. I bring up the audio window and notice that the waveform is not moving when I talk. And then it kind of hit me that in Keat, obviously my audio does not play back to me on my side. So for like the first 25 minutes of this show, I am not here. I have no audio track. So for this, I'm just going to kind of fill in and give you the summary and like the main question that I asked. And we missed some just gold because my comments and my rants where I interrupt the guest are always phenomenal. And I know you're distraught that you have missed such golden guys' rants. But unfortunately, we will have to do without, and we will have to do with some fill-in comments until I figured it out and corrected the audio, and then it's good after that. I've just been having one of those weeks. I was on Zencastr and had a phenomenal 3-hour conversation with Max Hillebrand about privacy, about like what happened with Wasabi and the censorship, about a debate between fungibility and privacy, and then also like how you would even regulate in an anarchist market. It was awesome. It was awesome, and it's gone. The whole thing was lost to the internet abyss, and it hurts me deeply on the inside. So it's been one of those weeks with audio, unfortunately. But I shall dwell on it no longer. We will get into today's chat, the recording that did in fact survive, mostly. But really quick, let's thank our sponsors for today. And they are CoinKite. They make the Coldcard MK4, which is the most secure and most versatile way to store your Bitcoin keys. Bitcoin only since 2011. Go to guyswan.com/coldcard and get 5% off everything with code GUYS. And then, of course, the Fold card. Not a hardware wallet, a debit card that gets you sats back on freaking everything. If you have to fiat, do it with the Fold card. Friggin' 20% off with code BitcoinAudible. Go to guyswan.com/fold. And then where are you really going to stack? Where are you going to do your automatic stack? Of course, Swan Bitcoin. The low-cost, no-noise, pure signal way to onboard to Bitcoin, whether you're looking for a basic, robust, long-term savings plan that automatically purchases and automatically withdraws to your cold card, or you're looking for the concierge service with Swan Private, check them out at swanbitcoin.com/guy. With that, it's time for today's chat. Paolo and Mathias, redesigning the internet for fun and for revolution. All right, so we start this out again since I don't have any audio on my side. I'm filling in here. So we start this out by I want Paolo and Mathias to introduce themselves and talk about what their role is in this project and why they're doing this.
CSO at Holepunch. I'm a developer by almost my entire life, and have been always excited about distributed applications, scalable application, and peer-to-peer and high-performance computing. So, of course, have been involved so many years in blockchain. I have seen all the good parts of blockchain and also the bad parts, especially the bad parts. So I've been, the guy that always, when my friends or coworkers or people working with myself or using Bitfinex, we're all asking, what do you think about this, platform with this blockchain and so on and so forth, right? I've always said, this is the blockchain is not needed for everything, right? So I felt always that people were creating blockchains out of thin air just to, raise some money and become rich rather than actually solving an actual technological problem. So Mathias and myself, we know each other since a while, I would say. It's more than 5 years. And we have been always, sorry for the term, bitching it with each other about this very same problem. And eventually we said, okay, there is some good technology here. Why we don't work together to trying to create something different for once. So that's basically the gist why we are here.
And right here, let's hand it over to Mathias.
Yeah, I'm Mathias Buus. I'm the CEO of Holepunch, our peer-to-peer company. Like Paolo, I also have a long history in computing, especially in open source. I've been a JavaScript Node.js developer since Node.js started, if you're familiar with Node.js, and I think I have 1,200 repos on GitHub. So I often say, if you run any open source software that has anything with JavaScript, then you're probably running some of my software. So big background in open source and seeing the ins and out of that, and especially with peer-to-peer technology, been very involved in making BitTorrent stuff on Node.js, making scalable things there, making sure we have modular technology. So I'm the kind of guy that loves looking at a thing like BitTorrent and being well, this is actually 20 projects that each could solve one cool thing at a time. So there's a DHT in there. Let's get that out. So we have a simple thing. We're just running a DHT because we can apply that to 8,000 things. Let's get each component out. Let's make sure we can do it streamingly because there's no reason why not, and all that stuff. And that's why I have all those repos. But that kind of mindset, and that's actually part of why me and Paolo talked a while ago, because Paolo was very interested in the DHT stuff and for service infrastructure, and we talked a lot about that. And a little bit down this path of what if you just modularize everything and just make small primitives for everything that is easy to understand technology wise. So instead of having to understand one big thing, which is my normal criticism of projects, then you just understand a tiny thing that does a tiny thing well, and just that thing, and then you just kind of Lego your way out of it and build the system you want. And that's kind of the philosophy we have at Holepunch also about building peer-to-peer technology. So we have a ton of small things that solve problems well, and then that makes it very easy for developers and ourselves to understand, because the surface area is so small. So yeah, it's kind of my thing.
So I have a little rant right here about how much more efficient and reliable, and how the concept of modularity and engineering in a protocol sense is just, a really elegant way to do things, and it seems to be the proper way. It's kind of like the layering model, right? And how you layer protocols so that it has the highest reliability, and the least amount that you do higher up the ladder affects things lower down in the system, so that the base layer is not affected. And it seems like this is very much how they are going about it, or at least how they're thinking about their engineering for this entire stack of software and protocols and hypercore in general. I mean, I also mentioned randomly, I don't remember exactly what I said about it, but about Wikispeed and how their engineering model is in fact like a super modular car. Check it out if you want to look into it, but it's not that important.
I love this.
And
There's this like logic paradox that I can't remember the name of, but it's the ship of Theos or something like that. But like the paradox basically goes, if you have a ship and the ship is traveling and like every day you replace one piece of the ship with a new piece that you have, like you take one piece of wood off, you put a new piece on. When it reaches the other hopper and you replace it all, like is it the same ship or not? And that's kind of like modularity. Yeah. It's kind of like that's like modularity to me, where like you have these systems that are running, and you just swap all these things out all the time. And at the end of the day, it's like, is it the same system or is it a new one? Because modularity allows you to do that.
He's referring to the ship of Theseus here, which is a really cool way to think about it. But this is where I re-clarify my original question and ask Paolo, why? Why build this now?
So, internet is, we are now seeing different flavors of what is the World Wide Web. I started using the internet when, in the 90s, pretty early. And it was like this way to build by scientists actually to share knowledge, right? To have other people actually accessing knowledge. And then, Google started in 98. Right, and something like that, and they realized that they could apply a great idea that was, improving the quality of the search, because if you want to search, if you want to access knowledge fast, it's important to have a search engine. And then they started realizing that they could, build a ton of services and hook you in these huge system infrastructure services. Then you had the mapping services, then email. Pretty cool email they had, especially for the time. And then they have like G Suite and so on and so forth. But now, after year, and then of course there is not just Google, there is Amazon and there is Microsoft. Everyone is actually trying to, they thought, okay, this is really cool idea. I can squeeze data, I can make a ton of money if I own like 10% of people's entire life, because it's actually people's life. Right. So if what is stored on those data centers is ourselves, is part of our digital life. And so they kept growing, they kept going. Of course, they were making the life of developers easy, because before you had to, any developer or company, everyone that wanted to roll out their own website, even the ice cream vendors had their restaurants, they wanted to have their own website in 2004, 5, 6. I made many of them right back then, and but then it became easier for them to actually go use just Facebook, and then or use a pre-built infrastructure. And developers were they were also happy, because they didn't need to have to care about buying their own switches, their own servers, taking care of making redundant websites and failover and all this crazy stuff. Well, it's not rocket science, but still.
So it turns out, even though I had purchased Audio Hijack in the past, I had upgraded too far, and now the newest model, which I had apparently just automatically updated to, I no longer owned. So the license, I had to punch this into the website. I had to buy the software again, but it's a good program, so whatever. But that was like one of 3 big audio problems. And while we were while I was explaining what the hell was going on while we were sitting here in this chat and hanging out, it was funny because I was talking about how, even though it was kind of a pain in the ass to put all of this stuff together and make it work, the one thing that wasn't having a problem was Keat, was the camera and audio and the connection. Like, we had no delay. I think there was one time during the entire conversation that Paolo was like a little bit delayed or like jumpy, and the rest of it, good quality video, worked like a charm. And that's actually what Mathias is commenting about now.
And I'm in my co-working space right now. We have this like corporate lockdown network that blocks all the traffic of everything, but like the protocol finds a way through, because like we spend a lot of time doing that. So it's very James Bond-y when they. I love it.
But it's like
Here I was just trying to fill in where we were and handing it back to Paolo to finish answering his question where he left off.
yeah. So basically, the why is that we have been personally a lot in this space, and I've been trying to trying always looked at technology as something that should be, as we said before, as modular as possible. I always refer to one specific book that opened my eyes when I was quite younger, called The Cathedral and Bazaar of Eric S. Raymond.
So this is a great book that I hadn't thought about in a really long time, but I added the link to Amazon in the show notes if you wanted to check that out. It's Cathedral and the Bazaar. Really great book.
So now that old kernel, how you should build a kernel, like even microservices in the kernel, that is basically still like is the probably a holy grail of modularization, because when the Linux kernel started at the beginning, it was actually not modular. The LKM, so Linux kernel modules, started slightly after, because Linux was starting to get a lot of complaints because or like was, sorry for the term, like a little bit like a pissing contest between all the big boys back then that were creating their own kernels, right? There was Minix, there was, GNU Hurd was the kernel proposed by Stallman, had all the microservices inside the kernel. It was actually really, really cool. So as a fan of that or that approach, also, this is again back into what Mathias said before. That is one of the reasons why we met, because Bitfinex infrastructure has its own internal DHT. So when I joined Bitfinex in 2016 as a CTO, we had a huge monolithic code base. And it was like hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And today, basically, we have around 600 to 700 GitHub repositories. Most of them are private, but more than 100 are actually open source. And everything from between the machine engine, reconciliation, storing user data, whatever you can think about, every single aspect of our Bitfinex platform is a microservice, and use a DHT, because I believe that DHTs are offered this intrinsic value of creating redundancy, because even if you remember, I started with the concept of BitTorrent, right? If you remember BitTorrent, you had like many people, you were searching for a specific file, many people have the same file, you can take the file download the file from many people, right? Many devices that were seeding that file. So with the same concept, I said, okay, why we don't rebuild our internal network as BitTorrent, right? So instead of sharing files, you can actually share services. And instead of putting the file name and the information and links on the DHT, you could actually put the service name and the location into your internal infrastructure to find that service. So now basically we have this DHT internally, where you don't need any configuration file, anything, right? So everything is actually a DHT entry. So you can go and fetch what, of course, with the proper accesses and so on and so forth. But inside this network, you can actually spin up a new node, and it will find the configuration that it needs. It will connect to the other services without basically anything. It will bypass, will cross network, because of course we have multiple data centers and so on and so forth. And then of course Mathias and us kept redesigning and rethinking this idea, and it became bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it becomes like, okay, what if we can actually take the web? We started from, okay, the web is inherently centralized because of all the incentives are to create bigger and bigger data centers, because to harvest people's data, right? And the people's data is money, and we always say you are the product, right, of the Web 2. Web 1 was this beautiful peer-to-peer knowledge sharing system. Web 2 is like data mining, basically people's data mining. And Web3 is also, that is the other part of the round. Web3 is no change from Web2 in our opinion. Web3 is like, this new hat that is put on top of Web 2, where there are still data centers, because no one has figured out how to fix that part, and then you have these huge data centers still, but they lure the users thinking that finally, instead of getting their data harvested for free, they finally will get some breadcrumbs. They it's like, okay, you get to eat something, but just a small portion that still the VCs or the big tech guys will decide, and nothing will change, right? So we are always moving, like kicking the can in, and just trying to change the narrative so that people will take time to figure out that nothing changed actually. And so we were super annoyed by that, right? And also we were annoyed by the crypto ecosystem, where everyone was launching a new blockchain to solve problems that couldn't or shouldn't be solved, like the easy way to make a blockchain faster than Bitcoin is reducing the block time, but then you encounter many problems like centralization, speed of light, and so on and so forth. And all this to us has been hopium, freely distributed to users that were actually there just to speculate. So, but didn't actually, although all the promises were kind of similar to the ones that we have, in a way, like a decentralized web and more scalable and private and so on, we feel like they are not really caring about solving those problems. If you want to solve those problems, you shouldn't create something that makes that creates a platform that allows to speak louder people that have more money. Because to me, if you create, one thing is Bitcoin is pure wealth, right? It's wealth that moves. But if you create any other platform that actually trying to solve messaging, trying to solve this word computer and so on and so forth, then you are trying to create something that, again, will work and will create better opportunities for people that are richer. And so that is a problem. If money is money, and that's fine, that is a big problem when it comes to data and freedom of speech and communication. Because the beauty of BitTorrent, and actually what we are doing with Holepunch, is that instead of being a system that transfer wealth, is a system that transfer data and is a communication system rather than a wealth transfer system. And so when it comes to communication system, knowledge sharing, and it's pure data, should be as cheap as your internet bandwidth and your home line, right? You shouldn't have, yet another token that suddenly, someone will force you to use it because, for some unknown reason. Should be internet, and landlines has been almost super cheap nowadays, should be free. You're already paying your landline. So you should be able to communicate with the people you like, or for your job or friends, with a family, just with what you have available. And the biggest lie ever is that, as you are seeing now, is that peer-to-peer, is a worse version of the web, right? It's not good enough to create services in par or superior than the decentralized services. And you said about the glitches in the recording that you had with centralized solutions, is because they have, if many people do recordings with really high quality all together, they cannot scale really easily their networks, right? So while we are actually using the combined throughput of our networks to offer the highest quality, instead with centralized services, they will always be limited. So that's the beauty of peer-to-peer. It's actually reusing what is available in people's homes that is far more powerful than what people think, and make it just, and reusing all that power to offer services. Sorry for the rant.
Obviously, the first thing I do is chastise Paolo properly for ranting on my show. Obviously, Guy is the only one that is allowed to rant. But I move this back to Mathias, and I ask, we've got, Hypercore, Hyperdrive, Holepunch, Keat, like there's a whole bunch going on here. why don't you break it down? Like, what are the pieces of this puzzle? Tell me the whole stack and how it works.
Yeah, so like let's do a 8-hour podcast, right? Oh, it's great. So like, it's what's great about this thing is that it's many things at once. So and like it's both like an application that is very easy to use, that doesn't try to technobabble you in the face, that doesn't try to like just go out of its way to tell you that it's peer-to-peer, because you don't need to know about it, because it's just a really, really good application. It just happens to be peer-to-peer for all the things you just mentioned, and like for privacy reasons, all that stuff. But like by itself, it's just like a better alternative than existing centralized solutions, because we take the brakes off. We just allow you to use your potential, your computers, your internet connection. Like, and one of the beauties of this, and this is something me and Paolo talk about a lot, is like the actual application is simple enough that it's made by a single developer on our team over the last like half a year, basically. And the reason why, and that's just like a normal front end developer, like that's solving, focusing on all the problems they should focus on, like UX, like making sure it's smooth, making sure it's like feels like a great, beautiful app, design, all that stuff. Because all the technical pieces and all that stuff is something we've been solving over the last like 5+ years. And like we talked about earlier, packaging it up in like small modules that like just solve peer-to-peer use cases. So underneath this thing, there's like a big stack of technology that goes all the way back to my BitTorrent days and like iteration from that. But like things like Hypercore in here. Hypercore is a thing we've been working on as on my team, open source for many years. That is basically this idea of what if you could take just data streams, because everything is a data stream, and you could make that swarm on a peer-to-peer network. So like imagine like data that can be replicated through people, but still be verified that it came from the same person, that you can kind of like sync only the parts of which you need, kind of like imagine a movie, and you can actually do this in Keat right now. If you drop a movie in Keat, it's adding to one of those data streams, but you can seek in it, and like you can add a 20 terabyte movie or like whatever, like doesn't matter. And you can still like just seek to the part you want, and you can watch it and it's live, and you're like, wait, did I just get like 20 terabytes of data in like 2 seconds? And it's like, no, but you're only getting the parts you need. That's the beauty of it. So like these kind of peer-to-peer primitives and technology allows you to kind of like wormhole, into the future, where instead of doing everything up front, we can just kind of like do these magic things. So tons of technology around that in here. What I really love is that at Holepunch, and this is something me and Paolo also talk about a lot, it's like we always just think about the user first. Like, it's cool to have all this technology, but like at the end of the day, it's used by users. So we try to focus everything we do around like, delivering this thing in a way where the user doesn't even know what's going on. Like the file sharing is a great example of that. You don't need to understand how it works. You just drop a file, it's there immediately, and like the user experience around that is just like unparalleled compared to what you're used to. Same with the video, like the quality is just cranked up because it doesn't cost anything, because it's just like we're all on these. It's like why not, right? It's kind of like the why not. So tons of stuff like that. And like the app itself here is actually running in like I said, it's like one developer has been working on it for like 6 months. That's because it's also part of our platform offering that we'll be releasing later in the year. But basically, the platform gives you all these primitives. So as a developer, you don't have to worry about it. You just get it handed to you, and you just kind of like Lego your way out of it. You build these small, and then you ship it. And the beautiful part is when you ship it, you just do it from your computer. Like you don't have to like put it up on a server or anything. You just like start joining the network on your computer, and your app can kind of leave your be seated from your computer at home and into the network. And then like users help host the app when they use it and stuff like that. So it's like it's really exciting, and almost also a little bit emotional for me, but yeah.
So here I just made, I was just kind of talking about how clean Keat and the UI for this app was, and also kind of how simple the entire thing was built, in the sense that like you can just like kind of turn on dev node and look around the app, and it's basically just HTML and CSS. So I could like kind of screw around and make my own visual theme. I didn't have the patience for it, so I like changed the color of a few different things, but that was it. I was done. Reset it. But it was fun, and it was kind of cool to just explore and see that. But then I also brought up Telegram, like how we have a private Telegram group for the audio knots. But it's like kind of the perfect example of a small community that I could lean on them to help host, or I could host it on multiple different computers, and we'd have a private, like kind of like our own little group that had no central server, and we wouldn't have to worry about, like Telegram says it's end-to-end encrypted, but it's like bullshit. Like I always assume Telegram can read the messages, and I think it would be stupid not to. So in bringing that up, I wanted to ask Paolo kind of what he thought about that model and how Keat could be something to entirely replace a setup or the usual relationship like Telegram. But this is when I figured out that my audio was not in fact recording, and we paused again, hung out for a few minutes while I sorted it out. So why don't we do the same and hit our sponsor for today, and we'll jump back into this chat finally with a proper audio setup. Tell me you're looking for an air-gapped, secure Bitcoin hardware wallet, one that actually has a lot of options to make it super versatile, that you can use it with your phone, you can use it with your desktop, you can plug it in, you can use a micro SD card, peak security and peak versatility. That's the Cold Card MK4. And CoinKai doesn't stop there. They not only have such an awesome hardware wallet, they've got the Block Clock Mini, famously displayed behind Jack Dorsey in a congressional hearing. It's basically a real-life NFT for a true Bitcoiner. They've got the Tap Signer, which is an awesome, easy-to-use tapped NFC key, great for multi-sig and super fast access to your keys. They've got the Open Dime, the physical Bitcoin that you can just pass around like cash. Verifiable from top to bottom, trust no one, and so much more at the CoinKite store. And you get 5% off all of it with code GUYS. GUYS. 5% off everything in the CoinKite store. Check them out. Link in the show notes at guyswan.com/coldcard. Now that you have all of your Bitcoin hardware problems solved, let's get back into the show.
With the mayor today.
Yeah.
1,
we can hear you.
2. I can hear myself. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. This is what I needed. I think I've got it all running this time. All right. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, Paolo, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I think first of all, just to keep it simple, that part. First of all, Telegram, as you said, super centralized organization. And by the way, I'm opening a few parentheses here. So Telegram is blocked in UAE, I think, for at least the VoIP part of Telegram. And, all, like, for example, WhatsApp has issues with China and so on and so forth, right? So one of the issues there is that you, when you are connecting to these centralized applications, some governments decide that they are not great for their people for some reasons, and so what they do, they harvest for the fixed IP addresses, static IP addresses of these infrastructures like the Telegram and WhatsApp and so on, and they will just ban them. And the result is that you had really a terrible user experience, and nothing actually works from every single place of the earth. So you have to try to find the minimum common denominator based on the people you are talking with, and that is a really terrible user experience. Close parentheses there, you have, so in your specific case, for example, you are uploading a file on Telegram. I really doubt that you can upload like maybe 4 gigabyte or even a bigger matrix file.
Takes a long time if I do, but I think there's like a limit. I don't know what it is, but
it's like 200 megabytes, something like that. So won't even work, right? And in the end, you want just to send stuff between your computers. And by the way, yes, you're using Kit, but eventually, there will be a nice file sharing app, right? So one of the things that excites us more is, imagine if you could have an app, right? And you also mentioned your personal server, right? But you want to have your personal server because you don't want you want to make sure that things are actually fully encrypted, and you store your data and so on. But imagine if you can have like a swarm of computers and people and peers actually helping you to back up your personal life, and you are 100% sure, bulletproof sure, that because you have access to the code, you see how it works, that this data is stored by others in chunks, just small chunks of data, randomly distributed, will be stored by some peers around the globe, that whatever happens to your house, hopefully won't happen anything, but even if it blows up, you have a way to retrieve that data, right? And you can have a nice folder, imagine Fuse as a file system where you can mount a file system, you can keep dropping data there, and behind the scenes there is this magic that takes that data and spread it in full encrypted to peers, right? And you pay like $10 per month or $5 per month, just in really small fractions via Lightning Network to these peers, just to keep backing up your data. And wherever you are, you can take that, you can walk away, you can cross borders, cross nations. And eventually, hear this, we can give you a solution for which you can recover all your data just with 24 words, exactly as Bitcoin. So if you can back up your personal wealth with a ledger with 24 words, you will be able to back up your personal life with 24 words, because on the others, you arrive on another country, you spin up a fresh laptop, you download this application, and with 24 words, you will basically derive the same, in the deterministic way, will derive the master key, will start accessing all your data across this huge swarm of peers. That for us is like the holy grail of backups, of file sharing, and it's how it should be, right? Why you should use Google Drive, that will start, now, if you're not sure if you saw Google Photos, right? You start typing like dish, and will find all the photos of what you have been eating, or your selfies where you were like eating something, right? It's like crazy. So I'm really scared of this stuff. And so imagine but the beauty of it is that your computer have enough power to do that. So actually, when you actually back up your data, you can actually create an index yourself, because there is a ton of open source libraries like TensorFlow and so on that can already do that for you. You don't need someone else behind the scenes to do it for you. So you can actually create your own index. So then when you are on your phone, you can search dish places or dishes, or beverages, and will filter your photos, because you can do that yourself. And that's, I believe, the beauty of the technology that we are creating here is like a do it yourself, do it at home, but with few clicks, without having to worry of creating your own storage. And if you want, you can actually do that, and still we can allow you to create to install a simple node, a simple relay in your home network that will not use Samba, will not use all these like really outdated protocols, but actually just boom, works. It's just another relay, another node that will just like a sort of slave that will sync all your data. So if you want to have a really hard copy of your data at home, you can do it. Will just work as Kit is just working. And just to finish my rant here, is the other side of it is that we are now seeing Pelosi going to Taiwan, everyone getting crazy, and then we are seeing the geopolitical situation of the world is getting worse and worse. And Mathias asked, we find really two parallel interesting use cases, right? So he was saying that if I'm not wrong, Denmark, it has this issue, but also in Switzerland, there is this concept that actually public administrations shouldn't use Zoom or anything that will make the traffic flying outside of the boundaries, the national boundaries, right? Because it's like if you have a local administration or like the confederation talking, they all use US or Chinese-based applications, like communication suites, and that's really bad. And so and there are laws.
That's ridiculous.
And there are laws in countries that are actually preventing this or saying you shouldn't do that. But the excuse is that there is no functioning solution and really good functioning solution to solve this problem. But when I started talking in Switzerland about this kit, I heard people. I got so much interest also by public administrations, because they said with kit, their traffic will remain and will be shared with the people they want to, and will remain confined to the geography that they are all in, right? So that is a huge problem. And also imagine that, with these geopolitical issues, right? What the data can be weaponized, right? So you have now a data center somewhere, and they can, first of all, you lose access to all your data, or a nation, the entire citizen of a nation will lose access to a specific data center that was holding all their data, that is in another jurisdiction, that somehow is against them. And first of all, that can be weaponized, and they lose access themselves to that data. It's going to be a huge mess. So peer-to-peer is the only way, right? You talk to the people you want to talk to, because Kit can actually solve many problems in that are due to geofencing certain type of application in specific jurisdiction, can have actual access to your own data always, because you can keep easy backups of your data. And also, as Mathias well said, connections, it's much easier for Holepunch and this technology to actually find its way through the other peers, even with really complex mesh networks or blockages that are imposed by governments or and so on. So that's what excites us. We want to, when we build something, we want to create something that is resistant to the wrath of God, rather than something that the first wind will fall down as like a castle of cards.
Yeah. So there were two things in that. First is, this actually made me think about the fact that this is a solution to the ransomware problem too. Like, if you have your information distributed in this way on multiple different computers, then if you lose one of your nodes because someone hacked and then locked your computer with somebody else's, with another key or whatever, if I've got, like, I would use this as a way to back everything up on my Linux machine. I have like 64 terabytes of data, like as a filmmaker.
It's a really interesting point, because I think about it a lot. Like, often when you hear about something like a ransomware attack, especially with big companies, they always say this, like, they got into the network and then they, started doing it. And when you do peer-to-peer technology, you need to have like a thinking as a developer, like as the person making the peer-to-peer technology, that's like, everybody is an adversary. Right. Yeah. So like, trust no one. So everything like end-to-end encryption is not an optional thing you can add on. Like, if you don't have that, your system is going to get destroyed.
It's fundamentally the most important thing
it's like
you
an
have to have, right?
Like, if you don't have it. Like, data has to be authenticated. Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, it came from somebody, this IP, it's
probably a user that I should trust.
Yeah, because they're inside my network, so it's all good. So like, you build in, like, so we spend a lot of time obviously building all that stuff in, and it's kind of like, you cannot turn it off because then the network don't work. So like, fundamentally, when you build things on top of it, you get all that stuff for free, because it's kind of like, you have to think about it, right? So you're completely right. Like, and this is, and I also think like, this is not because we had like an epiphany that nobody else had. It's like, if you were to rebuild the internet today, they would do it this way, because it's like, it's fundamental rights of both companies and people to have this stuff. But that's the cool thing about P2P networks. Like, you have to think less about these things, because like you say, the discomp. And then what I also love about it is like, we're taking away and as Paolo also talked about this, but like, we're taking away the locality of data, right?
So data, yeah.
Like, we're really used to think about data in this terms of like, it's on a server somewhere, and that's how we access it. It's like, I connect to somebody and get the data. And in peer-to-peer, you're much more self-described about the thing. You're saying, well, no, it's described as this cryptographic thing that's like a public key, and that's identified. And you know what? I don't care where it is, because that's enough to unravel it and like verify it. Also, it could be on 20 computers I own. It can also just be on my computer here, and like it does matter. So also, like, you know how a lot of these like decentralized solutions today are like, well, step one, it's really easy. Step one is you set up a server and you run our software on it, and then you're like, well, that's a lot of work, and like I gotta probably put a credit card in and pay the $5 every month, and like I'm just trying this thing out, and I don't really know.
Yeah.
I might want to have 20 things. Like with peer-to-peer, it's kind of like, no, you know, you have the hardware, it's on your computer, and then like, you know, if you're scaling and you're like, you know, very successful, or you have something very successful later, you can just put it on other computers also. Like there's nothing stopping you from that. There's nothing stopping spinning something up later, but you don't have to do it up front. And that part is really, really, really important. And like, you know, like Paolo said, like we had a case here in Denmark a couple of weeks ago where school children use Chromebooks to do the homework. They actually get them distributed by the schools, and all of a sudden they had to ban all of it, because they realized that there was no clause protecting the school kids' homework from being mined for ads, because
Oh, snap.
And like that's, you know, we're pretty progressive society here in terms of like data privacy, and like there was no like from day one to day two they just banned them all. And like me as
wow, wow, that's crazy.
And now they had this big problem of like, you know, so what's now? And like, you know,
nobody's got a computer anymore.
Yeah, like back to pen and paper, right? But like. And like you look at that as a peer-to-peer person, you're like, obviously that was going to be a disaster, right?
Yeah.
They should just have peer-to-peer software that just works, and they should just be able to sync it at school, like, you know, without being. And then it can all be on premise and local, and like, you know, especially when it's something like kids, like, you know, it should be very, very local, and there's no reason for these like big collections of homework.
Yeah.
So like, super interesting.
These massive honeypots and surveillance centers that everybody's connecting into to just give them.
But nobody can send it to also, like, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like drugs, right? So these companies are keeping developing, you know, yet another thing, right? So it's like they are feeding you small portions of drugs in the form of products, right? Super heavily interconnected products between themselves, so that you get hooked, right? So now if you want to go away from Google spreadsheets or whatever, like collaborative editing and so on, it's so easy to use that it takes time, and you have already all your stuff there. So you have to be really motivated to give away some of your convenience, and try, because you want to be more private. I'm not sure if you saw the ad that we made for kids. I really love the one, like be weird, be yourself, be free, right? So you had like, if you're a girl talking to your boyfriend, you want to share some photos, or you are just parents sharing photos of your children with your with their grandparents and so on. Why the hell why you should be afraid that this stuff can be used by big media corporations, right? So it's nothing new, right? We are not saying anything new, but the fact is, the things that makes us super excited is that there was no solution before. Right, so we know that of course Kit and Holepunch are really, really small, but I think that from the tech part and the funding part and so on, we have everything that we need. So we are ready to invest all the energies, all the development resources, all the funding that is needed to make it something extremely meaningful and of impact, right? So it's not like it is a simple short-term project. So we are fully committed, because we are really activists in this world when it comes to freedom and privacy, right? We feel like the dystopian future is already here, just people don't realize it.
Yeah, just to add something like to what Paolo said, one thing that's also exciting for me is like, I love seeing you guys get like excited about Key as this now, and I'm just thinking, dude, we're sitting on like 10x more of this stuff. Like, it's just sitting there, and like we have, so much, like we have disruptive search indexes, we have all this stuff we're building, and it's just, you don't have no idea what's coming. So super excited.
Dude, okay, maybe we should jump right to that. Well, actually, I want to ask a question first, just because my inner geek can't understand how this works. But how does the discovery, so BitTorrent works with trackers, and you basically, we trust third parties to index, but the index is so small and so agile that it's insanely difficult to centralize. It's incredibly like during the worst days of I was a big advocate for all of this stuff back in the day. Still am, obviously, but when the Pirate Bay was getting heavily attacked and their website was a new URL every 4 weeks, they would encourage you could download the entire index of the Pirate Bay. And I did. I would just make it a couple of weeks habit of just going up and saving it on USB of the entire website. And so it was 30 megs or something like that. It was almost nothing. But that always seemed to me, even back then, was the problem of how do you find your peers? How do you establish connections? How do you establish files and the directory for everything? Because it seemed like the only solution was centralized. So in that context, what the hell is a DHT? And how do you find other people in this cloud? And what is essentially an actual cloud of users and devices as opposed to just a centralized server that everybody's connecting to?
So it's actually there's a really interesting history there with the BitTorrent stuff, because the trackers, you're right, it was that was this, so BitTorrent, I think, is one of those classic, origin stories of somebody sat in a dorm room and a week later he came out and he has made this little thing and it kind of grew out of control. So a lot of things were not really but in a great way, right? And trackers were one of the first solutions to that, where they were well, we need to find peers, so we'll just have a server and you can connect to it and you can be give me some peers. And it was here's the peers. And then they can figure it out. And as BitTorrent grew, that became a problem, right? Because obviously a lot of people were trying to stop BitTorrent. That's part of my favorite part of the story is David versus Goliath. And they would just take down the trackers because they could just knock on the door, running the trackers, and boom, done. And so there was actually a lot of R&D in BitTorrent and figuring out how can we get rid of the trackers. So BitTorrent eventually moved to this thing called the DHT also, which is the same thing we're using in a very pragmatic way.
I realized it's part of it. The main BitTorrent?
Yeah, it's that was part of it, because they kept being knocked down. So they said, what if instead of we had one server having the thing, we just had a million servers having a very, very small part of the thing. And then we made these basically the peers in the network, right? And then we make this little overlay, some algorithm that are been researched very heavily, something called Kademlia, if people are interested in listening. That is these if you talk that? Kademlia, 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 which is one of the very classic routing protocols for DHTs. The same.
If you remember, uTorrent has that thing where you could enable Kademlia, or use Kademlia network, when they were making the transition, when
way back.
Yeah, that's interesting. I missed all this.
2004.
I loved it in the context of BitTorrent, because it's one of those things that was very academic at the time, and there's people were is this a good one or is this a good one? And then BitTorrent were well, we have the problem now, right? So we gotta figure it out.
It's not academic. Please give me something.
Yeah, they get this in, and then they just got it to work, and they're actually, it turns out we have to fix this and this and this. And it, they went from having a few trackers that authorities could just knock down to being well, now you got to visit I think it was 20 million nodes when it was biggest, literally 20 million computers, and turn those off to turn it off.
Wow.
And they're wow. Okay, that doesn't work. So then actually what you did in the end was then they're well, it turns out that everybody's accessing through a centralized system, the web. So so they started taking down the websites, and I think that's what they're still doing a lot to contain it. Yeah. So it's actually the centralized part of it still. That's the issue. So I saw that, and that was kind of when I got involved in BitTorrent, and I got super excited about these Ts, and we've been then iterating those designs even further, just kind of bringing them into the 21st century a little bit more, with cryptography and stuff like that. But really good ground up design. Then interestingly, what happened in between also, not to get too technical, but BitTorrent was very big, I think, in the early 2000s in that area, maybe a little bit later. But like the internet was also like physically smaller back then. Like there was no phones and stuff. And that meant that we had more IPs, like IPv4s. And there's actually not that many IPs. There's like 4 million of them. And like IPv6, there's way more. But like that's still very fringy, unfortunately. And what happened in between, we had this explosion of devices. So actually connecting things got really complicated because of that, because you don't have IPs on devices anymore. You shared IPs, and IPs have IPs have IPs.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. So that's actually why this like current connectivity thing kind of stopped working in between. So if you connect to BitTorrent nodes today, because they're still on like the old versions of these things, you'll probably end up connecting to a server, is my guess, because like connecting home devices over BitTorrent, it's really complicated in most cases. Mm-hmm. So we were like, well, obviously we need to get that working in the modern world. Like, so we spend a lot of R&D developing protocols that where these devices can. It's actually called Holepunch to each other, with like in these modern constraints. And then also then we were like, well, how can we? Because that actually requires some messages going back and forth. It's a little bit technical, but like. Mm-hmm. But how can we do that actually utilizing something like a DHT? So we have that same kind of like, you can't just take down the server that's like helping you Holepunch, but like you have to take down the entire network. And that's what we do now. So that's like super exciting for me, because I'm just thinking like, what's the weakest links left? And like, there is none. So like, that's super cool. But yeah, so
that's awesome. How long have you been working on this? How long have you been?
Well, I've been,
this thing specifically.
I came out of college. I studied math in college, actually. In Denmark, I was very lucky because in Denmark, they have this like neoliberal view on the world where they're like, well, you need to get a job also. You can't just like do math and then sit on your couch. So they're like, you got to take like 20% computer science. I was like, okay, sure, whatever, I'll do it. And then I got really then we had a course. One of the computer science course was like distributed computing, and the guy was like, here's the computer and here, connect them to each other. And I was just like, mind blown. So I actually started way back then just being like, oh, okay, I got to.
I'll have to thank Denmark's invasive regulations for that one, I guess.
Yeah, and like Denmark is a semi-socialist country, so you get paid to go to school and stuff like that. So I was just like sitting on my butt doing all this stuff. It was awesome. And like, so it actually started for me way back then, and then obviously it got very, very serious. Actually, around the time I met Paolo and was able to also like sustain myself working on it full time, and so it's been 5-10 years, something like that. It's been crazy.
Wow, that's crazy. Actually, Paolo, you guys, so y'all have been funding a lot of stuff, or at least you're investing in or running Synonym, and have been building seemingly a lot of the different foundational pieces of this. Is Keat and what Synonym is building going to be interoperable? Are these things competitors? Are they complements of each other? Like, how does this all fit into the architecture?
Yeah, so this is part of a really big evil plan. No, I'm joking, but it's. So I like. So one of the other things that I learned quite well is the concept of mesh networks, right? So you cannot expect to have perfection in this world. So everything is always clunky, is kept together by rubber bands. And yet people expect that, the 99.99% of the people needs to see that everything is working well, especially with technology, right? So I like the fact that, also we are seeing some of our competitors in a way to trying to build something similar, either blockchain based or not. Feels like the approach that we see is always, they go first to they have a huge whiteboard, and they start really doing these complex diagrams UML, right, is like that describing language, and then for objects, interactions, and so on, where they predefine everything that on how the word should behave rather than actually how the word behaves. I believe that the word behaves in a really unexpected ways, and tech as well is of course deterministic in a way, but also when you start bringing tech to a really high scale in this world, it start working different ways that you expected. And so what I like here is that, with both Bitfinex and Tether and Scene and Holepunch, we are actually creating all these small pieces, and we have a ton of ideas, but really, it will take like hundreds lives to make all of them. But still, we have all these small pieces, and we see what we get excited about all these small things that become big things, and then we patch together and we're trying to solve one of the ideas we had. And you realize that the more you do this, right, that from the outside, again, I always refer to the Cathedral and Bazaar because book, right, from the outside might seem like something crazy, something that is not really well thought through, but actually is a really good design process where you don't spend years in trying to draw all the possible interactions, but you create, as Mathias said, really small pieces. So whatever idea you had in the future, you will have in the future. You Lego all these pieces and you fulfill like a really simple MVP, and you see how it works. Mm-hmm. And this is what we are doing, right? We've seen them, they are working on a wallet, they're working on a social network /tags that actually is based on Holepunch, right? So it could be like a social application on top of Holepunch, because anyway, the technology that Holepunch has created with hypercores and so on and so forth is super versatile. So it solves all your problems in terms of connectivity, storing data. And before we were talking about how people find each other in this network, right? So the beauty of it is the recursion that you can have. So for example, to share, in order to meet each other, you have to share key through another medium. For example, a pub key for this room on another medium. But eventually people will be able, so we will be able to create tools on top of Holepunch, like decentralized multi-sig name servers. So instead of having to use Telegram to share key, then people can actually, can create their own indexes of data. And this is one of the things that probably one of the things you were referring to is also having these magnet links that were indexed by websites and so on. But imagine like now you will be able to build on top of Holepunch like your index where you have your own representation of the data that you want, or like the files that you want to share, or this huge database you can have your own index. But then other people can fetch it and back it up through the, because it's Swarm, the index itself is a file, right? Imagine, so in the concept of BitTorrent, right? So you were downloading the index from Pirate Bay, but you could have the index, or imagine if you could have the possibility to having a searchable index as a data structure directly on BitTorrent, shared across the peers, and so on and so forth.
It's just got the most peers of everything because it's the file that lets you find all of the other peers and all of the other files.
Also imagine like what Paolo was saying, like imagine that file just being not just a static file, but like it's a live thing. So every time something like you have it like immediately, right?
Yeah.
Is a live data structure that other can contribute
to. Crazy. It makes no sense that shit works. Sorry.
And it works today, and people can keep contributing. So you can create actually, instead of having one file where there is one single guy that says what is the state of the art, you can have multiple people collaborating to a same version, or like a small different views of the same data structure,
branches of
and like a little bit like Git but distributed, right? And so they can all contribute, but at the same time people back it up and keep adding, keep streaming and swarming these all constantly updated version of these indexes. And then there can be parallel indexes that then don't share anything with the original index, and so on and so forth. You can have like local indexes, someone in Vietnam making the best list of the best restaurants in Vietnam and so on, right? So hundreds of thousands of millions of indexes, and people are sharing these indexes, contributed to these indexes. The indexes are will be a key component of this thing. So eventually you will not need anymore to share like a link to this room on Telegram. You can actually, I will find yourself directly in the peer-to-peer system rather than having to use another medium. That is where we are heading to. It's super exciting.
Yeah, just want to one thing I just want to add, it's super exciting. Also imagine all these different indexes that goes around, right? It's just data, and as soon as you decouple applications from data, which big silos don't like to talk about. That's why Twitter doesn't really like it when you use their API, because they want to get you to the website so they can show their ads and make their money, right?
Well, it makes the platform kind of go away.
Yeah,
the platform idea is kind of dependent on that, and that's how they lock everything in, is trap you in a platform.
Yeah, and as soon as you remove that, right, then you can have this explosion of things where, like Paolo says, there can be, thousands or millions or billions of indexes out there, each focusing on one thing. Maybe somebody's like, these are the best books about Turkey, right? And that's all I care about. And but as soon as you just start defining common formats around it, then you can have one developer sit and make the most amazing app for searching these indexes, and it's compatible with all of it, because everything the user has to do is just tell the app what index is and just post it in, and then you're like, oh, actually that's a better app out here. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna move that out, move all my data over there. As soon as you decouple those layers, this crazy explosion happens. That is just super exciting to me, and I don't see anything else solving that than peer-to-peer. It has to be peer.
And that is basically part of the book, How You Kill Google, right? Because then if you have one single guy that can aggregate all these indexes, search through these indexes, and then basically you have the cleanest way to access knowledge and find knowledge super fast, and get actually updated by the people that do care about that concept. Imagine even Wikipedia, right? So there are so many problems with Wikipedia where people are fighting over a single page, and they're trying to get to the one single source of truth for that specific content and argument. But what if there are many truths based on who is actually you are asking the very same question, right? So you can weight that index or that content based on, in a way, you remember when Sergey Brin created the algorithm for the first actual good algorithm to search the web, with the page rank and so on, right? So you could actually argue the same thing with actually people connection to find the data, and you can reuse as a part of that literature if you want, but you can do it in a full peer-to-peer fashion, as by the way, as should have been at the beginning, right? So because they at the beginning, when they were doing this stuff, the web was still, in hundreds of thousands of data centers, and people were sharing that stuff from their computer. And that was 98 when they started this stuff, right? But then, now they have much easier job, because the latency problem is much smaller, because actually the majority of these websites are actually in their data centers, right? So it's they are not anymore a search engine to find the knowledge around the world, but they actually have the knowledge contained in their own premises. That is something that no one wanted to happen, but yet it happened.
It's also super interesting what Paolo was touching on there, because when I look at peer-to-peer and this explosion of data, also I don't like all these big mining algorithms that build all these profiles around me on Google and tries to figure out which fridge I want to buy and push that to me and all that stuff. But that doesn't mean that I don't like science. There's some interesting things in those kind of algorithms. It's just the way they're being used that it's really, really terrible and not good for the world. But imagine you took all those algorithms and you just pulled them locally, right? So you're just actually, I do want to know what kind of fridge I want to buy. I just don't want Google to tell me and be influenced by all kinds of other things. If I could just run it locally and be in control and not sharing anybody, and just run all this kind of modern science on it, that's super, super exciting. And that's how we take all of this kind of technology to the next level without Like we just take away the dystopian part, basically.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
And if you think about it, you I think I mentioned the Twitter infrastructure, right? Well, Mathias said, they want to push you to the website, and they said, well, this is their core business. But in the end, it's like a dog eating its own tail, because imagine in a scenario where everyone could reuse Twitter tweets and build their own front end, right? At some point you could do that, like 10 years ago. But then how they can maintain probably tens of millions per month of cost of an infrastructure, right? Because that thing costs a lot of money, right? So they are desperate to force everyone to watch their own mobile application or website. Yeah. Otherwise, they are going to choke under the pressure of the cost of that infrastructure. But what if that infrastructure all goes away? That's why we are putting, and of course, in time, energy, money into this project. But it's just like a development time, right? It's not because you don't need anything else, and you remove completely in a snap of a finger all the cost of the infrastructure. You can do AWS Lambda without AWS, right? You can do everything without data centers. So that's the big lie that we are fighting back.
I got a question. Will Keat have? I mean, I assume a whole series of things are in the pipeline and a whole series of applications here, obviously. And it seems like the vision is to redesign the whole freaking internet. Or at least all the building blocks to allow that to happen. But will there be an easy way? Because I have been hosting a few rooms literally since I first downloaded the app. But it seems like I can only do it one at a time, and I just have to log in and leave my thing open with my stuff muted and everything. I would love to be, like I said, I have a really obnoxious amount of excess terabytes that I can freely offer to other people to have these rooms available, and specifically rooms that I don't need to be privy to, right? Like I can just host for other Bitcoiners to figure stuff out. Or Paolo, I don't think we even recorded this. It was in our gaps, but the idea of a peer-to-peer mining pool, Bitcoin mining pool to connect to people, like holy crap, that did not even come to mind. But when you have a connection that's this fast and discovery that this easy, of course you would want to use it for that. That would be the first thing you would want to use it for,
But also because F2 pool can the IPs of F2 pool exactly they can be blacklisted, right? So in the end, it's not like we want to reinvent the world just because, or the World Wide Web just because for the sake of it. It's just like
fun.
It is fun, but at the same time, it's like it won't. We are all used to live in a really nice world. Well, at least a portion of the humanity is used to live in a world that is permissive, right? Yeah. But the problem is that we never, a portion of the humanity, because of course another part of the humanity is already living in a world that is completely not permissive, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, at least ourselves, we are living in Europe, so that is fairly permissive. But first of all, you have to think to people, and that is the Bitcoin ethos, right? You have to think to people that don't have the same luck. But also, what if tomorrow Europe doesn't get to be any more permissive? So how we are pretending to adjust ourselves and our lifestyles. So in the end, but I think as in the fact that for every action there is a reaction of the same energy. In a way, we have been seeing this immense force towards huge centralization, and there was not enough a good opposing force that was pushing on the other side, like a full decentralization first movement. And that is what this is for us, right? A sort of hedge against the future, against even a farther dystopian future, because there is really history showed us, and we would be stupid to forget history, right? History teaches us a lot of things, and thinking that things cannot change also in Europe or in US with a snap of the finger would be like really foolish.
Yeah.
And like to answer your question, Guy, like
I love I ranted, so I kind of lost.
Yeah. Well, like to answer your question, like we are totally working on that, and like actually the app today, if you're not in a room, you can still the people that you were in a call with can still like get the data from you if you're previously connected to them. Like,
really? So if I bookmark the thing, or is it literally just
bookmark the thing, or if it's recent, then it's available.
So I remain a peer. I am basically hosting the ones that I have bookmarked as long as Keat is open.
Like if other people join the other room, they can get the. If you go in and write messages, but you need to have the app open, obviously. So it's like
I have them bookmarked. That's awesome. That's awesome. I wish there was just an indicator that said you're hosting, like just a download indicator and a hosting indicator. That would be awesome. But in that vein, oh God. Totally. How the hell is Bitcoin and Lightning going to be integrated in this? We haven't even talked. This is a show about Bitcoin. How is one of the first things I saw was that, like, okay, we're going to have Lightning. You mentioned, Paolo, that you'll be able to actually have your keys be a ledger. Quick question: will I be able to use my cold card? And when will, or what's the vision for Lightning in this system, in this stack?
Well, I mean, actually, it's actually interesting just to like Paolo has a really good rant on payments in general, so I'll let him do it after. But like, you already answered your own question like 5 minutes ago, right? You're like, I have all this data and I have a computer that's pretty powerful, and I just you just actually said to give it away for free, but like that, hosting other people's rooms, stuff like that, like any kind of thing like that, like obviously you should have a way to do that and then also charge for it or give it away if you wanted to, like. Whatever works for you.
Maybe I get 10% of everybody's tips in the room. I'll be down with that.
Just also like being like doing basic monetary transfers of things, kind of like a missing human right, especially between people in calls. Just like that's one of the things I love about Bitcoin, and like Lightning, how easy they make that stuff. I have family living in other countries, and it's actually incredibly complicated, and expensive. Like very expensive to send money through like normal old school channel.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, people don't realize that.
Absolute pain in the ass.
That I know, and like and also like this whole explosion of things like we talked about with like data and indexing and all this thing. Like obviously, like there needs to be a primitive that everybody has where you can build commerce on this, where you can build like services that do things without having to give it away for free. Like if I'm like the global expert on something and I'm making like a very valuable data set for my laptop here, I want to be able to make that into my business and sell it, and like or give it away for free for that matter. But like I want to be able to have that option. So I want to be able to just run it and then have like a primitive that I don't have to be an engineer to understand, but just like be like, well, for every, you can access my data set, but for every record you get, you got to pay me a cent or whatever. And then if it gets really popular, I can scale it up and I can actually turn it into a huge business or not. And also like running like thousands of businesses on my laptop, I think is very interesting. Like, that's one of the things, I've been an open source for 10 years. And like I said, I have, thousands of modules, and like there's this website where you can go and you can look how many times they get downloaded, and they get downloaded like billions of times, and I make $0 from it because it's too hard. Like it's way too hard because, you have to monetize, to take one thing and monetize it. You can't just like make a little bit here and there. But like with a platform like this, you can, because all of a sudden with things like Lightning, it's very, very easy to just have like 1,000 things to make $100, and then all of a sudden that's $100,000, right? So
yeah,
I personally think that's like super interesting in this explosion of commerce. So yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, it's the part that I like more is that Holepunch, as we said, is data, right? So we are all big believers in Bitcoin and Lightning. So of course, Lightning is has a similar concept, right? It's peer-to-peer payments, and there is all this rant about how you can actually Lightning is the only scalable payment solution that is available nowadays and is live production ready nowadays, because everything else will not scale up to millions of transactions per second, just because they have usually their approach. The other solutions approach is having a global state where everyone sees what the others are doing, and of course it's not scalable. Imagine that you have to see what your fridge is, if like thousands of people having fridges that buys groceries for them, and cars paying for their own electricity, light bulbs as well. Robots, right? We are going towards a world where robots are becoming much better, like Boston Dynamics robots, right? And also artificial intelligence, and computers will be extremely smart and will be able to do machine-to-machine payments at a much faster pace than ourselves. So you need peer-to-peer payments as well. So we really love Lightning, but also we understand that Lightning has been created for transfer of wealth. So all the protocols, all the design around Lightning has been purely designed to move a payload that contains specifying how much wealth you are willing to move on that channel, right? And if you have a channel that is like 5 Bitcoin, for example, and you transfer like 1 Bitcoin, 0.5 Bitcoin, the size of the payload won't change much, right? So it's that. But with Keith and Holepunch, we are actually seeking the ultimate solution for transferring in a really high throughput, high availability, and so on data, right? Data that can be hundreds of thousands, millions of times bigger than the payload that Lightning uses. So for us, Lightning and Potassium Tether on Lightning are payment solutions and payment primitives that are optional and a feature of the software development kit, of the SDK, of the framework, right? So that users can actually decide, as Mathias was saying, to be paid for the good services that they provide, but they are not like a core part of the network, right? So it's one of those modules that small pieces of the Lego you can take out and replace and improve and whatever, right? It's just that.
It's like modular technology, right? It's all about using things where they make sense. There's no way around it, like Lightning and stuff. It's an amazing way to do monetary transfers, like Paolo says, but there's way better ways to do terabytes of data transfers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you have, if you are so at least ambitious, you have to use the right tools for the right job, right? So it's not like for the sake of piggybacking on something that's existing already, like Lightning. You shouldn't be lured into reusing that just for the sake of using it, but you should really get really deep into making sure that is something that you can use for the long term. Because also, since everything that we're doing is also in early stages, right? So it's a half I've written or all over the place, although it works still really well. It's something we need to be able to scale our protocols and improve our protocols the more we go, right? So, and we cannot be suddenly in a situation where we have to find dirty workarounds to create to build better a better experience and faster throughput and so on and so forth, and we have to create workarounds around like a pre-existing technology. So for us we wanted to be completely free and start from scratch. So these making a change in bolt specification takes ages, right? So we don't want to wait for that, and we don't need, right? We don't need to bother them with our needs, because their needs are not our needs, our needs are not their needs.
Yeah,
it's also,
we can work together, right?
It's super interesting because, if you're deep in decentralized technology and how it works technically, decentralized technology is actually all about making trade-offs. It's all about figuring out what you're not doing, because at the end of the day, there's these physical constraints, like speed of light is important.
Yeah.
And stuff that's kind of hard to fix, right? So when it comes down to making that trade-off, and that's what every decision as a developer, P2P developer, comes down to, you want to make sure that you always err on the side of what are you doing? There's we want to make sure we, when the trade-off comes, it's not like, is it because it's a monetary network, or is it because it's like data network? Yeah. And then like just use both networks that,
use them for what they're good at.
And then it's like
the network for payments and the data network for data.
Yeah, it sounds really simple, right? But it's like that's the beauty of modularity. It sounds really simple. Then when obviously it's when it comes down to it, you might gotta make decisions. But like, it's hard and good.
And in this way, you don't have to make compromises, right? Again, we don't like compromises, especially when it comes to code. Code is like, has to be beautiful in the sense that has to make sense. Every time you read it has to make sense and has to be as simple as possible and as contained as possible to make it like art, right? Yeah. So in the end, code is a way to express art, and it's the simple it is actually better rather than the more complex it is. And we think like trying to create these really tiny primitives that solve a single problem, that can be like peering with others, right? So finding each other, peering with others, and taking a file, splitting in chunks, and store it on different peers, and have an index where you find the peers, and so on. Everything is super simple. And as I said, there is no huge specification. It's like all things, throw them together and something beautiful happens, without too much planning. So I really love the Steal the Bazaar approach there.
Yeah, for sure. So in digging into this, we're gonna have to resurface this because I'm killing your time here. We've gone pretty long, but I want to hit a couple more questions before we do. If that's okay, is everybody still good?
That's fine.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So digging into this, I can't believe that I hadn't heard about hypercore and like what's going on prior to this. I thought for a bit, and I think I even mentioned it on the show, is that like I had heard about this a number of years ago, but thinking back on it now, it was John Carvalho, I think, that actually introduced me. I think that was the first time I ever heard about it because he sent me a link to a video of you, Mathias, and it was old. It was like 2014 or something. And what you did on the thing, it was all by terminal. But what you did, I was like, holy crap. Like you were like running a VM on somebody else's computer over the web. So I've been digging into this in the last week very, very hard. And I found all of these Cabal and Beaker browser and like all of these things that are actually leveraging this. And some of them mostly like a year old or 2 years old or something, but there's not a whole lot going over there. Like Beaker browser is absolutely fascinating. But how can I use that? Are these projects dead? Are these just kind of like little side things? Why have these things not caught on? Why haven't I heard about it until somebody showed me Keat and I was like, holy shit. And then I had to go from there. So if you're not using the Fold card yet in the Fold app, the first thing you got to know is that they have a daily faucet. Like they have free sats. If you just download the app, go to guyswan.com/fold and it'll take you straight to the app. You can literally just get sats every single day. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay anything. Just wake up in the morning. It's my first thing in my routine is get my Fold spin and get my daily sats. Next, they have the Fold debit card and gift cards in the app so that you can literally get sats back on stuff that you would buy anyway. With a debit card, that is the only way to do fiat. If you're doing fiat and you don't get sats on everything that you buy, you're missing out. Fold makes fiat not suck, or at least suck a lot less. And you guys can get 20% off the debit card with code Bitcoin Audible, all one word, all capitalized. That's the show. 20% off the annual fee, and you get the Spin Plus card that gets you up to 100% back, even a chance to win 1 Bitcoin on every single purchase that you make. Can you imagine? It's like the publisher's clearinghouse of the modern day, except instead of a big stupid check, you get a big fat UTXO with a whole freaking Bitcoin in it. And one day, my Netflix subscription is going to spin a whole freaking Bitcoin, and you're going to be jealous. You're going to wish I'm going to have already stacked 1 million sats just from watching Netflix, which I was going to do anyway, because I have the Fold debit card, and you're going to be jealous. You're not going to have all those sats, and I am. You know what? Don't get the Fold card. Don't do it, because I want the sats. The sats are mine. So don't go to guyswan.com/fold. Don't get 20% off with Bitcoin Audible, and stop thinking about it. All right, let's get back into the show.
Yeah, it was great written. So yeah, like, it's kind of like, it also goes back a little bit to what Paolo was saying with this like explosion of ideas, and because it's easy to build on, you have all these projects coming up. You also have a lot of projects dying out. Yeah. There's also new projects going on, and like we have a Discord where there's just everyday people making crazy stuff. That's like, I think there's many things that are interesting to me. Like you said, I've been working on it also for a long time. Like that was actually part of my BitTorrent journey, that like whole booting things. But we've just been like really, really focused on making the primitives, right? So like when you make primitives, you don't necessarily think you have this like big picture idea of like where this thing is going, but you're not building an application. You're just saying like, to build the application in the future, we're gonna need a database. Mm-hmm. So you spend all your energy and your mental energy, and me and my hypercore team, we do that. And we're like, let's figure that out. And like Paolo said, let's figure it out in the simplest way that like, it just works. That is like simple, but not too simple, but like just a perfect amount. This like takes a while. Get all the components in. And actually, that takes years, right, to get that done, right? So, and we do it all because we're open source fanatics. Like, so we do it all in the open, and we iterate and we make a lot of stuff, and then we're like, oh, this doesn't really work the way we do it, so we deprecate and make new things, probably to the frustration of people in the very, very early days working on it. Yeah. And then like you quickly realize you have all these like explosion of modules, right? And it can do everything. It's like it's powerful enough to do everything, and in my head I can like see all the things, but you need to be able to deliver this stuff in a way where the developer just gets, all the modules at once, basically. But like gets a thing where they can just, without being distributed experts, they can just sit, they can have a thing, they can just pick and choose what they want. Because that's the missing piece right now on that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So the ecosystem is kind of like this amazing decentralized peer-to-peer ecosystem where you can build everything. But you need the missing piece, the runtime, the thing that just allows that one developer to just ship it and put it all together. And that's actually the Holepunch runtime. That's why I'm so excited about the Holepunch runtime, because it's the thing that actually allows us to take all the thing we've been working on for like 5+ years, to package it up in this little runtime thing, and just like
stick it on top of it, and then it works.
And you can just like it's just JavaScript and like normal web development flows, but in this runtime thing, so you can just kind of like iterate really fast, and you don't have to learn anything about the underlying things. And that's like even though that sounds like a simple thing, that is like massive, right? Without that, it's kind of like, how many people know how the Linux kernel work? It's probably just like Linux 12 hours.
Download it. I don't.
Yeah, it's but like people just want to install Ubuntu or like whatever. Yeah. So so it's super important, that piece, and that's also why like when me and Paolo started talking about building this thing out, I was like, hell yeah! Like this is the obvious next step, and it's just happened to be a really good timing for us, because like we're in such a like good state with the primitives that like we can actually focus on this thing and not focusing on scaling those things. So it's like super exciting.
Nice.
I think that there is also the big shift has been, with we started really to move away from we started talking more and more about it, and at some point either you make it real or not, right? So you have to say, we have this thing is so big, right? So it could be so big, and sometimes you could be even scared for how real it can be, right? And how big it can be, right? So then it's like when you assemble
like you envision it, this is the sort of shit like the idea of like creating WikiLeaks, or the idea of like spinning up BitTorrent. Like BitTorrent destroyed an industry. like it literally just like cracked the foundation of how the entire thing worked, and they had to change how the entire design and the structure of a whole business model. A business model had been around for 70 years, stopped working because somebody built a thing. This really, I see this as like a potential vat for platforms that are 20 years incumbent and think that they have this nice little cozy corner that can't be challenged, and that now that they get to abuse because they have a very high position of power. And we can start kind of at the corners threatening that by moving information around them when they would prefer that we could not do that.
Yeah, and basically that's in order to achieve all that is that is basically the vision, right? You want to take everything that was built before, and of course you don't want to spend another 20 years to redo everything, right? So, but now you are in a stage where you can forget about the infrastructure, everything, right? And you have just everything built, the primitives, and you can actually deliver great applications. The thing that really I think made it heavily change is we assembled the A team, right? So we put together, we grew. So open source is great, and we will continue on that path, but at the same time you need all the open source minds to focus on one single thing, because otherwise you cannot compete with the big tech, right? So they will hire 30,000 developers.
Yeah,
you need all that many, because all those developers are trying to solve problems that shouldn't even be solved in a way.
They're all trying to make their own standard.
Yes. And you need the right developers that all focus their energies for many years on one single thing. It's okay, if we can wipe out everything, how we can redesign it from scratch. I think it's this is why we are here today, right? It's that is basically the moment when myself, Mathias, we started saying, okay, but are we doing it? Are we doing really for serious? And at some point said, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Super. It's also being at the forefront of technology, and that's where I like to be. And it's good to have a person like Paolo also, who's always trying to ground me, being a little bit looking we're 100x ahead of the curve, right? And I'm but what if we're 1,000x using this thing? And so that's also what's super exciting about getting this out. And because like I said, we're sitting on so much amazing technology that's gonna be mind blowing.
Yeah. 2 more questions, and I'll let you guys go. And I'm probably going to bug you again in a month or 2. But first is on the note of open source. What of Hypercore, Holepunch, Keat? What is open source? What will be open source? What's the kind of plan around that whole thing?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we mentioned it many times, we're big believers in open source, and everything will be open source eventually. I can't.
Everything will be open source.
Yeah, everything that's going to run on your computer basically is going to be. I can't imagine running anything eventually that's not open source.
Good.
It's why not? Basically, it's how everything should be. Right now, Keat itself is closed because where you're trading is, like I said, see up in the corner it says alpha. So it's an early build, and we're a little bit also, we're just releasing this amazing technology out into the world. And I also been at the forefront of open source releasing in the past, where people just immediately fork it, put a new name on it, maybe put a shitcoin in it, and then raise tons of money, and then you're I actually just wanted to release this out and get feedback. Curated. So we need to buy a little bit of time there before it's probably going to happen eventually, right? But so right now it's closed. It's going to all open up this year by December, including the platform and the app itself, and that's
sweet,
super exciting.
Hell yeah! So on that note, have you spoken to Start9, Get Umbral, Mynode BTC, Breeze, Sphinx? Have you talked to these guys about how this stuff can be utilized, and so that I can install this as a little app on my Start9 and my other node?
So not really, in a sense that we some are so some are actually could be considered competitors. It's not we are simple guys. We don't even we don't even consider much anyone competition. We like to take we like to think that we are all part of this movement to fix how internet works. Definitely, there are parallel solutions that could pop up, and that's, by the way, one of those reasons why we didn't want to open source everything from the get-go. Also, because as Mathias said, you can imagine how eventually the Web3 we see will start thinking, nice, I can create a new token so that people, in order to pay, in order to talk and create a room, they need to use my token, right? So that really sucks. And also, We see other, chat solutions that are there with the Lightning integration and so on. I think that they are, our like Kit chat is more at like a sample it's not a sample project, but in a way is our way to showcase the technology. And we have like all these crazy ideas, like an app store, like where it could be like peer-to-peer VPN, and then a peer-to-peer mapping, and then like a mining pool, and everything like can come. And we don't want to do it all right ourselves. It's like that's why Holepunch will be fully public and open source, because we as a company, of course, eventually we want to create maybe some services that can offer some paid services, right? So that's fine. But the beauty of it is that we will not have control of the network, because the network, there is no global state network. The network is just with your peers. So we are actually creating a even playing field for every developer to be at our same level to create applications on top of Holepunch. And Kit is a demonstration of that, right? Will be open source, people can fork it away and add other features. We just believe that our approach is like is a way that allows us to move really fast. Of course, we are always welcoming other projects to integrate our technology, and also someone on Discord was asking if the chat itself, right? That is, the text chat that is in Kit is a module by itself. So imagine that you can take that and you can install it in a game, like in a multiplayer game. You can use the Kit chat, and you can, by the way, pool the data. And if you want, you can even join chats that you have in Kit. Right, because it's the same data streams, everything is a stream.
That's exactly right. That is exactly what my envisioning is. That's why I wanted to call Sphinx, is to like hit them up in Twitter DMs, like, guys, just use this chat, and then I'm gonna join my Kit room on Sphinx and run my connect.
I was discussing with John, right? With he's building his wallet, and basically the wallet can have a contact list, but the contact list, we can import that contact list in Kit, right? So you can actually start having, it's profitable. It's like as long as you have just to visualize data streams, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's become simple as that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Good God. This is going to be nuts. I want it yesterday. God, I'm so impatient. We haven't even finished this call, and I'm mad that y'all haven't built it all.
But let me tell you that my expertise is building matching engines. That's one, and all the crazy trading tools that we have, right, in Bitfinex, right, and. Right now, as I told you, Bitfinex is almost fully peer-to-peer, although in an internal network. But actually, one of my secret dreams is taking a portion of the Bitfinex matching engine that I've wrote, and I imagine this peer-to-peer trading system actually working on Holepunch, right? You can use Holepunch to create the most unstoppable trading experience with trading signals provided and elaborated by peers and resold, and you can actually create the most unstoppable trading system ever with Holepunch. Is like is my secret dream is like it's be insanely powerful the way we can build it. And it's not even difficult. The fun fact is that it's not even difficult to do it with this technology.
That's crazy. What are the current biggest challenges? Like what's the biggest bottleneck right now? What's the if you had a magic wand, what would you make go away?
Well, right now we're on a really good trajectory. Like the biggest bottleneck is always like the explosion of ideas of all the things we can do.
Yeah.
Time
versus manpower. Yeah.
Like that's why I'm super excited that we're going to open it up to developers. So we can get all those ideas running in parallel. Just get the world to do it. So we can focus on like I love to focus on just like making the thing just run fast, right, and like be unstoppable and like all that stuff. And that's sad. That's really sad for me because like I also want to build the apps and all that stuff. So we gotta focus our team around that and like building Kit. But like it's amazing right now, and like it's is moving really fast. And if you use Keat every day, you'll probably also see that almost every time you restart it, there'll be like a new thing added because it's so easy to push things out. And, like it's very iterative. So like lots of challenges ahead. Obviously, like not a lot of things we're adding, a lot of things we're scaling, and like as the world moves on to this thing, I'm sure we'll have a lot of interesting challenges also. But yeah, no, it's super exciting. Like we've been working on this for like 5+ years, right? So
well, how does it update?
Well, it's like updating. It's like we don't compromise, right? So the app itself is also running on this distributed file system that's running on these underlying data streams.
So when I open it, it's just the newer version.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you're getting like a ton of data from the network just because you have all the data already, right? It's just like it's talking to peers, being like, is there a new cryptographically signed proof? Because obviously it's not just like a YOLO proof.
You'll download everything.
From the app issuer, and then if there is, it's just like figuring out, well, what's the smallest thing I need to do to connect the app you have now to that, right? Like blah 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 technology magic.
Holy shit! So it just does it on the fly with whatever piece is missing with the computer you're connecting to, dude. What? That's crazy.
And like it's super cool, right? Because like it's also doing in this way where the app only for you as a user of it only pulls in the resources from the app bundle it needs to do. That's kind of like going back to that demo I did way back with the virtual machine.
Yeah.
So like actually the build of Keat right now I think is around 250 megabytes because it just has a lot of like debugging tooling and stuff like that for also when something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. But you as a user of it, you only need like 10 megabytes because that's actually a critical path throughout the app. Yeah. So when you get it, like the system figures that out, and it's just like pulling that little thing in. So and now it's all local on your computer, right? So if by some like if you turn off your internet, you can still launch it, and you can still access your data because it's just all there. So it's kind of like the best of every world.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's so crazy. Mobile. Sir, I told you this was the last question. I'm an asshole. I lie a lot. But mobile. When is mobile coming? Because the people I've tried to get on have all been like, okay, well, where's the app?
Yeah, and mobile is. I mean, it's a text communication app. Mobile is essential. We're working heavily on mobile, and it's coming in the next 2 to 3 months. And we'll probably do like an early version or something like that. I'm be sure to ping you guy, and you can
absolutely
try it out.
Absolutely, send me that shit the second it's available.
I'm also super excited. I don't think I'll ever use anything else on my phone then. Like that's it for me.
After you move over from Discord to this for like the main chat, I mean, is there a link to the Discord that I can easily get to just like off the website or something?
On the website, KidIO.
Okay.
And if they think about it, the mobile is again, there is this other lie that mobile devices are not enough powerful, so they need to use
ridiculous.
It's exactly so you get told that, and you think, okay, fine, so phones needs to use a client server model, but then that's not actually true. So we figured out the technology, so the underlying, so you dig deep into the operating system of phones, mobile phones, and you can actually do the peer-to-peer protocols, implement the peer-to-peer protocols also on mobile phones. And so suddenly you have billions of devices that are super powerful, and they can do all the things that the computer do, right? And they have it there in your pocket. And there is eventually one thing that I believe that we will see in the next 20 years, right? The more people will understand what you're doing, will leverage the technology, will spin the technology in a way we might not have figured out yet, right? So because always happen also with open source, right? When you create something, then people take it in and use it in the most crazy ways. And so I think that we'll see in the future that these huge data centers will die down a lot. They could be still helpful for like artificial intelligence, where you need really low latency connections, and you have to simulate brains. And so it's hard when you have like one peer in Tokyo and one in Africa. But
yeah.
But for the rest, I believe that all those huge storage systems, they won't be needed anymore. Because in a way, I have probably enough space to back you part of your hard drive, like one gigabyte for or 1 terabyte for you. I can back you up, and you can back up mine, right? It's not like what I like is also this cross sharing of resources, where it's not like I don't have enough resources, but I might not have all these resources always with me all the time, and also I want to make sure that if I go on the other side of the pond or the world, I will have still access to my data without being worried that my home blew up, right? So it's like also cross sharing and cross linking our resources that is like what is going to make these huge silos of power actually being going away.
Wow. Well, shit. All right. How do people listen to the show, stay up to date on this? Who do we follow? What do we download to play?
Well, right now you go to Key.io and you scroll down, you go to there's both a link to the Twitter and the Discord, both legacy centralized systems.
And in both the legacy centralized chat rooms.
Yeah, I have to put a disclaimer on that. We're actually working on what we call big public rooms and Keat, so hopefully soon you can just join Keat. And
God, that would be awesome.
Well, it's closer than you think. So
yeah.
And but yeah, that's how you do it right now. And listen to your podcast also.
Of course. Listen to Bitcoin Audible. Paolo, and how do we follow you? Both of you.
I'm of course on Twitter making memes and then so Twitter Paolo Ardoino or GitHub PRDN and I'm on Discord, of course.
Gotcha. All right. Well, guys, thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking about this stuff. As you can probably tell, it is fascinating to me. I feel like I've been waiting. There's like a little piece of me that wishes I had the development bone in my body to actually program and work on this stuff. But I also have this love of just like testing all the tools, and I'll just let you guys build it because you're a lot better. You can actually produce. Thank you. This is awesome. I feel like I've been waiting for this for 10 years. Like I've been seeing it. BitTorrent Sync, I mentioned in the episode, was that BitTorrent Sync was such a brilliant potential vision of what I feel like I'm using right now to talk to you guys. And they made it proprietary and then limited how you could use it, and then charged you for it, and the whole thing fell apart. It was like for this brief 8-month period, like the vision was beginning, and then it all fell apart, and I was like, son of a bitch. So thank you for reviving my excitement and the hope that this is maybe a lot closer than I thought. Like a lot closer. So shit, yeah. Keep building. If you need any help funding things or getting exposure or attention about any of the things that you're building, or to reach out to developers, I will help in any way that I can. And I appreciate you coming on the show to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Guy.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Talk to you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode. That got me totally jacked, and I've been talking and thinking about a lot of different things. In fact, I hit up Mathias just a little while ago because I was wondering how you could modify this to actually be used for, since you have the native encryption and it's purely peer-to-peer, is how you could actually use this on the local area network to create to use for security cameras, and how you would actually go about it and what you would need to do on the camera side versus the computer side. But anyway, there's just so many different applications that you can think about, like developing on this model. And if you are a developer, if you're somebody who is interested in this, I highly encourage you to check this out, to hit up Mathias, see if you can start looking into working for this thing, to have a back end a networking protocol where you just don't have to set anything up and it would just work. I genuinely think there's a massive potential here, and I'm super excited about what these guys are building, what Synonym is building, and what potential is here. And like I said, maybe this isn't it. Maybe this isn't it. Maybe one of the TBD really kind of has the secret sauce. Maybe there's a lot more involved, and you can't just modular your way into an entire alternative protocol stack or communication stack for the internet and for the client server relationship. But maybe you can. Maybe you can. Maybe it works. So I'm happy to be wrong either way. Prove me wrong. I want to know. I want to see it. I feel like something is going to stick. Something is going to work like this. And the trust relationship between third parties and central providers needs to change. And I feel like this has an insane amount of potential to do exactly that. So that's why I'm interested in it. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why you agree. Check it out. I've been hosting a couple of rooms, and I've still been using this to chat with my brother and share. Actually, the intro video clip for this, like we used Keith to drop it in there and play it, so he could see it. And I don't know. I just think with the way this is as a piece of alpha software, I can see the potential. I can just see it. So with that, let's go ahead and close this out. I want to say thank you so much to Mathias and Paolo. They were immediate to respond, and we set this up. Had a great conversation. We're going to definitely have to re-explore this later. I'm super eager to see them integrate Lightning into this. There's a lot to come. So don't forget to subscribe to Bitcoin Audible. Follow Mathias and Paolo on Twitter. I have the links to their socials in the show notes, and of a number of different things we mentioned in the show to check out. And of course, all of our lovely sponsors, the Fold card, the debit card that gets you sats back on everything in life, Swan Bitcoin, the best no noise Bitcoin onboarding experience, and CoinKite, the maker of so many amazing hardware wallets and Bitcoin security tools, and of course, the Block Clock. Thank you to these guys, plus the wonderful Audionauts for keeping this show alive and supporting my work. So thank you guys. Do not forget to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at @TheGuySwan. We have some amazing stuff coming. Lots of great reads, chats, and some Guys Takes episode very soon. And until then, everybody, keep learning, keep stacking, and keep listening to Bitcoin Audible. Until next time, everybody, take it easy, guys.